Hello everyone, Arjay here, and this video is in support of a fundraiser for a lady and her two children, and I'll get into more details afterwards. Obviously I have to keep some details private for privacy's sake, but also due to the nature of what I'm going to reveal. So basically I'm seeking $15,000 for a lady and her children to get them to safety, and for their health, safety, well-being. And basically what happened was, back in May, myself, my ex-spouse and my two children moved into a share accommodation property, and let's just say things didn't work out. So many of you know that I have been separated for something like 5 years now, and I have two children with this lady. I'll try to keep her name out of it, but obviously maybe for the fundraiser I have to utilize a name or whatever for the actual page. But anyway, so we've got a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old, both girls, and we moved into share accommodation with someone that we did not know was a criminal at the time, and then things got worse. So throughout, after we moved in there, soon after, the person, knowing my dire financial situation, tried incentivizing me to do a job, let's say that. And what the job was this person had a contract to extort money from someone else who was a business partner. Actually, I'll try and do it with some initials or whatever. So say the person who we moved in with was person A, and person B made a contract for person A to extort nearly $380,000 from person C. And person C and person B were former business partners, and person C supposedly ripped off person B to the tune of, I think it was $378,000 and I don't know, maybe an extra $900, something like that. But $380,000 simplifies things. So person B made a contract with person A for 30% cut of whatever money was extorted, and person A tried getting me initially to write up a letter of demand. I do have legal qualifications, as many of you do know, but I'm not a lawyer, so I can't conduct legal services. And I told the person that. They then further explained that I would get a cut of half of the 30% fee, commission, whatever you want to call it, of whatever money was extorted, which is half of what person A was going to get. And then it turned out that even with the letter of demand, that was not going to be done in a lawful manner. Maybe the claims, or some of the claims that make up that figure, are legitimate, but it was not going to be done in a legitimate format. So the letter of demand, when done, was going to be accompanied by a warning, threat, condition, whatever you want to call it, and that was that the person had 7 days to pay, which of course is a ridiculous time frame to come up with $380,000. But if they didn't come up with it in 7 days, they'd be dead, and if they went to the police, they'd also be dead. I tried dissuading the person A, of course, and pointed out some stupidity, e.g., how's person C supposed to come up with $380,000 in a week? And it'd be really stupid anyway, because the first thing I'd be doing is going to the police. And then person A decided to and I'm not sure if it was person A or person B's idea to murder and dispose of person C, but it is what it is. So then person A was going to just take me with him and go meet up with person C and extort as much money as possible if the full $380,000 approximately was not come up with us just going around with him, then he'll be dead, and whatever money was extorted, which would have been in cash of course, would be 70% to person B, and then 30% to person A, who would then divide it in half to give me half. I of course refused, and then later on another person, person D, turned up at the property and was waiting for person A. Person A had possession of person D's car and was apparently, I forget the figure, maybe got him, person D, something like $3,000 worth of fines, as it was explained to me later. And anyway, so then person D allegedly owes person A $50,000 as well, and was to become victim number 2. So when going back to when it was financial incentives, because when the financial incentives didn't work, then person A threatened me if I didn't be involved in murdering and disposing of person C and D. And anyway, so going back to when it was financial incentives, and I found out about it being very illegitimate, and there were many conversations to do with these planned crimes, and I didn't plan them, but person A believes that they could persuade me to do this with them. So back when it was a financial incentive, I said something like, don't you know that murder's wrong, and of course you'd get caught anyway. Person A then confessed to murdering someone in the past and having gotten away with it. Of course I know the details for that, and I don't know if I should really reveal those here, but anyway, without getting in all the details, it was a historic murder, and person A was being sued by someone, and then that someone died. And without getting in all the details, etc. And of course I don't even want to reveal these details, but the police are doing nothing about it. That includes when they have recorded conversations of person A actively planning to murder people, and making threats and stuff like that as well. So I went to the police. Firstly, I called the AFP because the historic murder is a interstate murder, and then they said go to your local police station. So that was on the 12th of September, when person A also unlawfully evicted myself, my ex-spouse, and our 2 children. In the meantime, we were secretly looking for alternative accommodation, and we were even staging arguments so that if well, not if, but when we would find somewhere else, that my ex and the children, I'll take them to the new place obviously, but make out that I didn't know where they were, that they just disappeared, to give plausible deniability that anything was up, and then also keep them safe basically. So if someone thinks that something's up, then they may well do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. And if they think that someone has certain information, then they can try to extract that information rather than thinking that the person had no clue. And then when the person A was at work, which I did get person A job to, how can I put it? So at least he wouldn't be home all day, and also that way I could, so my ex flee with the children, and then one day they'd give an excuse to put our belongings in storage as well, where you get like those boxes on wheels, like a taxi box or it's basically a big wooden container, or you can get metal ones as well, and you pack it at the property and then get put in storage. So then one day I could just have minimum belongings, enough to fit into a little tiny hatchback car, and then just drive off, disappear one day, go to the police seeking any and all applicable rewards on the conviction of that person, and witness protection as well. So obviously for very serious crimes such as murder and even the planned murders, then that warrants witness protection because of the nature of those crimes. That the person's quite happy to kill people to get away with other murders and not go to jail for life. So anyway, it is very stressful talking about this, and of course it takes a lot of courage. That unfortunately, there are bad people out there that will use anything against people to try to destroy, discredit, etc. people, but I have to basically speak out, so to try and relieve the situation. So anyway, the police only bothered to do anything really when I went onto the property and filmed drugs that were growing there. It was a very large property, actually owned by the council, and I provided information to the council and the police, and drug supply was also going on at the property. Again, I do repeat multiple times, we knew none of this when we moved in there, and the police apparently went there and then chatted to the person, apparently didn't bother trying to look for anything, or didn't have a warrant to be able to look for anything, or perhaps the person A, who apparently has connections to a particular police officer as well as to a person who works for the council, who then was asking my ex, did you really live there? Because when I've been there, I didn't know that, you were living there, something like that. So it appears that they may well be friends with person A, and maybe person A was tipped off. So there, some issues. Then also getting back to what I've tried doing about it. So as I said, on the 12th of September, I tried calling the Australian Federal Police after, again, I was threatened, and even though it sounds really stupid and sounds like a Hollywood blockbuster or something, I believe that on the 12th of September, when we were being unlawfully evicted, that if it wasn't for a helicopter hovering just behind but above the house, that I'd be dead. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but all of this is recorded. And then the person A started looking at my phone in my hand and looking up. You couldn't really see where the helicopter was from where we were, because if the house is here, you're standing here, and the helicopter's up here somewhere. Then it seemed that that person thought that police were going to spring out of the air on ropes or land or something like that perhaps, and then even threatened me multiple times on it being recorded, with it being recorded, not to go to the police. And then that person held on to probably $200,000 worth of property, mainly my ex's property and my children's property, and then of course some was my property as well. And then after we moved, of course, I didn't say anything about going to the police or whatever, but person A was extorting us, sending SMSs, again, great evidence. Again, the police do nothing, where they were demanding payment of thousands of dollars and with threats to our property, and making up illegitimate claims that are clearly illegitimate, like that, writing, I don't remember which was which, but that I would have to pay that person $100 per YouTube view of my own YouTube videos, and $150 for every text message ever sent and received by person A from myself or my ex-spouse. Obviously, clearly garbage charges, fees, whatever you're going to call it, and that I'd have to bring cash and meet with this person secretly and not bring anyone with me, blah, blah, blah. I sincerely believe that the person was going to get whatever cash I would be stupid enough to provide, even though I don't have any anyway, but to then kill me, and then that saved risking going to jail for ever. Sure, it's illegal to kill people too, of course, but he already confessed to murdering a person and then was planning actively to murder 2 other people. And then he had previously discussed with me about defences to murder in Queensland, trying to pick my brain, I guess, such as defensive dwelling. So, if it wasn't just disappearing, then he could have tried to use that as an excuse or something. Say, oh, he threatened me, he had a knife, and then stick a knife in my hands or something like that. Even though with person A, they'd probably be stupid enough to put their own knife in my hand that is clearly their own knife or something like that. But, it is what it is. So then the police suggested getting what's called a keep the peace job put on. So the police will go to a property, you collect your own belongings, they just make sure that it's safe in terms of you've got a couple of police officers there that have guns, and keep an eye on the other person, and then obviously keep an eye on whoever's getting their property back. And the police kept cancelling those, even though I was driving from far away, and yeah, so that wasn't very helpful. The person then wrote in SMSs that they were loading up our belongings to take to the tip and into a trailer, and then it turned out that was correct, that they were loading the property up. And I called 000, the police went there, and then again future keep the peace jobs were also cancelled by the police, them claiming, even though travelling far away and things being planned, that magically these urgent jobs came up, etc. And that's, I believe that the urgent jobs were fabricated, or at least some of them. It'd be like, if there's a certain person that every time there's a court case where they're the plaintiff, that they always turn up and, prosecute their case. But if they are defendants, and they always have medical certificates, they're just coincidentally sick on 10, 15 different times when they're supposed to go to court, as an example. So anyway, I'm obviously giving the background so that you can make your own decision if you wish to share this video and fundraiser. Hopefully you do. And if you would be kind enough to donate, the money, of course, does not go to me at all. It does give me peace of mind, though. Obviously, if my children are safe, and also even my ex-spouse. We are still friends, and that'd be one less stress on my mind, but obviously I don't get financial benefit from the fundraising. Also, GoFundMe will take a small percentage as well. So sorry for being all over the place as well, but there's a lot of things that I want to say that I can't say, and yeah. Anyway, so moving back in time, so on the 12th of September, I reported via the telephone to the Australian Federal Police, and then they told me to go to a local police station. So the next day, I went to a police station, a large one with detectives. I won't reveal which names and whatever of those of that particular station. And then there was a plainclothes officer at the counter. It was after 5 p.m, so I guess most of the police went home, and he was sort of taking things seriously enough to make an intelligence report at least about the historic murder and planned murder A, planned murder B, to try and keep those people safe that hadn't yet been murdered. And anyway, so then I got told that I'd be contacted within 48 hours by detectives. The person went upstairs, spoke to detectives, came back down, said that, and then a second officer, a uniformed one, went in there and then started claiming that it was a civil matter, which is completely ridiculous. We were also asking to try and get our property back as well, of course. And then, people say, well, why are you talking about murder and whatever? And then you're also talking about getting your property back. Obviously, you're supposed to get remedy where you can. And obviously, what I expected might happen, bearing in mind that I had corroborating evidence in the form of recordings with me at the time, and they refused to accept that and said, when the detectives contact you, they can worry about it. We don't accept USB sticks, which is completely false, because I've been told by numerous police stations to provide them evidence on USB sticks. And anyway, so that was the 13th of September. And then went away and expected to get a call within 2 days. They did do an intelligence report. I was not contacted. I then tried, say, the next day. It's not particularly relevant which day it was exactly, if it was 2 days later, 3 days later, whatever. And then it's just like, just be patient, that kind of thing. And then I heard on the radio originally that a person was found in the Brisbane River under, was it the Story Bridge? Maybe the Story Bridge. And then that person's description, it was like, hey, we don't know who this person is, but they're described as XYZ, and it matched the description of person C. And I believe that, it was possible that it could have been person C, and person C has a business near the area as well, and person A was also talking about going fishing to dispose of bodies and whatnot as well. So I called the police station again, and then they said, we can't take anything over the phone. Come into the station tomorrow during normal business hours. And in the meantime, I looked up, and it was in online newspapers too. Police call for people to check on their friends and family and the person looked like this. And anyway, so I went in there again. At that time I spoke to someone in plain clothes at the reception. I'm not sure if they were a detective or if it was like a civilian administrator, receptionist, that kind of thing with the police. And they thought it was crazy that I'd be told to just come back, and they wouldn't accept my evidence and whatever. But then he contacted, from memory, the detectives, might have made a phone call or went and asked them in person or whatever. And then, because he went away and then came back sometime later, and then said basically, hey, look, it's been confirmed, you just have to be patient, blah, blah, blah. And then I went to another police station a few days later, and again, I won't reveal what that station is because it may well reveal my location. And then they at least bothered to tell me that it was that the name didn't match because the police had finally identified the body. It was in the papers again. And I'm probably saying way too many details to make it a compelling video because people get bogged down in details often. But summarizing that, the person A then put our property out in the open in the rain for many days, and I originally had to wait for police to do a drug raid on the property, and then supposedly they didn't find anything and it wasn't a drug raid, and a police officer at Redland Bay Station, I don't live near there anymore, but that's where the property was located. He got offended when I tried cancelling a keep the peace job that was finally set after I received emails, you effing dog, blah, 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 about the police going to the property. So then, I could try and arrange a keep the peace job. Then when I went there, they told us, no, you can't do that because you're not officially on the lease, blah, blah, blah. So then after I spoke to the detectives and went back in, remembering that I had arranged a keep the peace job, went and spoke to a uniformed officer at the counter, and then said I was just speaking to the detectives that raided XYZ property, and I got cut off and sort of yelled out saying we didn't raid anything, blah, 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 which which was very odd. But the point of me going back in there was to cancel the keep the peace job, because the detectives I spoke to said you can't get a keep the peace job, which turned out to be false information anyway. And so then so that was supposed to be the first keep the peace job. And anyway, between $100,000 and $200,000 worth of property has been destroyed, stolen, sold, whatever, and basically it's all gone. That includes things with sentimental value, even like photos, film negatives, what do you call that, a low boy or tall boy, whatever you call it, but a short one, that was my parents back in 1988, something like that. A lot of printers, like big color laser printers that were $3,000 each, all sorts of items. And anyway, what remains of those that could be taken eventually are in storage and need cataloguing, etc., so that damages can be assessed. And anyway, there was still other property left at the house because there was a heck of a lot of furniture and other property that could not be taken in a little tiny hatchback car. We did have a removalist truck that was going to go there, but I doubt that they would have picked up soggy boxes that were all falling apart anyway, and even law textbooks just completely destroyed, being soaked in rain and then going mouldy for a month or something like that. And at the stage, maybe a month and a half. And anyway, so then they were running late, and then the police contacted me and said, we're not going to do keep the peace job, you have to go through courts, blah blah blah. So luckily they were late, and they've not so far charged a cancellation fee, but you get the point. And anyway, so we still had probably how many cubic meters would that be? I don't know, 10 cubic meters of furniture and whatnot, and also a car. And then the person was threatening to dump our belongings on a nature strip, saying, hey, it's not my fault if people steal it or vandalize it, blah blah blah. Then I started receiving phone calls from people who had seen our phone number graffitied on the car and also on some of the furniture, saying this rubbish belongs to blah blah blah, here are their phone numbers, something like that. And anyway, I'll skip some of the details. So this has taken 3 months up until, well, in 2 days' time it'll be a 3-month anniversary. Woohoo, what a great anniversary. And basically I was called by a council ranger, or as they call it, a local enforcement officer for that particular council, or maybe they call it that in Queensland generally. But they called me, obviously getting the number from the graffitied vehicle, and furniture and electronic items are all smashed up, put on a nature strip, that kind of thing. Again, the police do nothing about willful damage, nor stealing via unlawful conversion, nor anything else. And then they basically said, oh, we understand you've got all this stuff dumped on a nature strip, blah blah blah. And then I explained what happened, stated how I have evidence, including SMSs as an example, and whatnot. And also rewinding a little bit back, myself and my ex-spouse successfully got what are they called? Restraining orders in Queensland, but they're called peace and good behaviour orders against person A to protect. So on my one, it's to protect myself, my children, our safety, as well as my own property and their property, and my ex's is to protect herself, the children, and their combined properties. And the person has done that against a peace and good behaviour order, which is a criminal offence. Again, the police did nothing, and I've been victimised since appealing a case brought about by a Sergeant Arundel at Surfers Paradise Police Station, who is a police prosecutor, and she committed perjury, and that perjury was obtaining a judgment via fraud, and that was for my peaceful assembly or protests or rallies, whatever you want to call it, at Surfers Paradise. The original one was for the 31st of May, and she falsely claimed that we had the legally required mediation for the Peaceful Assembly Act to kick in, so that the courts would have jurisdiction to hear the matter, for her trying to ban me from protesting and organising protests against COVID restrictions. I was the first person in Australia, nearly the first person in the world, to do COVID restriction protests. It turned out that in, I don't think it was Berlin, but somewhere in Germany, a day and a half earlier, that they beat me to it. I don't remember if I knew at the time that they protested back then or not. I'd have to watch one of my old videos. But the point is that the magistrate also made unlawful orders in banning me from protesting, in which case the only power they had under the Peaceful Assembly Act and the jurisdiction to hear that, even if there was jurisdiction, which of course there wasn't, but was that I could either have an authorised protest, either with or without modification, or I couldn't have an authorised protest, in which case you just have a common law one. But the point is, with an authorised one, people are a lot more likely to turn out, as happened on the 30th of May with my authorised protest in Brisbane, because the virus doesn't spread in Brisbane, or didn't spread at the time in Brisbane, but in Surfers Paradise, the virus would spread rapidly there, supposedly. But not only do people get confidence, you also have the ability to not be fined or dealt with for obstruction. So just say if you've got a long column of people and they're walking past a shop and a customer's trying to get in, then that's technically obstruction if they can't get in because they have to wait 2 minutes or something, but therefore people are protected from being fined for that. And also people would see it as government sanctioned. And I also did apply for COVID exemption with the chief medical officer, who's now the governor, Dr. Jeanette Young, and instead of dealing with it as a yes or a no, yes, then it would have been great. No, it could have been reviewed by QCAT, but not dealing with it, kept her immune from any queries as to that decision. And then the police, purportedly banned me from protesting and doing political rallies, which was in support of the 2020 state election, to try to get rid of these COVID restrictions, which are unlawful. The lockdowns don't work, as many studies have shown, such as Professor Israel, an Israeli epidemiologist, who compared lockdown jurisdictions with non-lockdown jurisdictions and found that it made no difference, as in no statistically significant difference, technically they call it, and i.e. the lockdowns aren't shown to work. They are also unlawful in Queensland, not only under constitutional grounds, but all what's called exempted subordinate legislation, which includes any regulations, rules, etc. that are not made by the Parliamentary Council, i.e. Dr. Jeanette Young's COVID restrictions, must be gazetted in order for them to have any power and be enforceable. And that's assuming that they would be even valid, which valid as in constitutionally valid, which I suggest they're not. Anyway, so skipping ahead, again, on the 23rd of November, I went to Cleveland Police Station yet again, and this was under instructions from the council ranger, who told me to go to the station to make a statement, and therefore, person A could be fined for dumping more than 2.5 cubic meters of property on the nature strip. And then when I got there, I said to presumably she's a civil person, not a police officer, but plainclothes lady who is on a desk there often, said, hey, look, the council has sent me here to make a statement so they can prosecute person A for illegal dumping on a nature strip. And then she went away and then came back. A police sergeant, I think it was Sergeant Turdgon, not sure how to pronounce her name, but its name spelt something like that, she went out and started to speak to me. Then there was a blonde, older sergeant who came out and then started saying, "Oh, that person is always in here. Are you recording me?" Blah, blah, blah. And this is days after the Triple C referred my police complaints back to the police service. And presumably the station was tipped off about that, because that included, XYZ has been occurring via the police allowing, people to do XYZ, willful damage, stealing, cancelling the keep the peace jobs, etc., etc. And I believe that obviously that station was tipped off. The blonde female sergeant abused the whatever out of me and was demanding, as I said, am I being recorded? And I went like this to show, hey, look, I've got nothing in my hands. And I again repeated, hey, look, the council told me I'll get the person on the phone, and went to call the mobile number of the council ranger who called me, because it wasn't on like hide number. And as soon as I pulled the phone out, the other sergeant, turd gone, stated, actually I think I pulled the phone out after she stated, told me to move on, but you get the idea. So this is very paraphrased. So she told me to move on. I'm giving you directions to move on from this station, and for 12 hours or whatever. And then I asked, because the law states that in order for you to get a valid move on direction, you must be provided with reasons and grounds for doing so. So in the legislation itself, it says under maybe about section 48, subsection 4 of the Police Powers and Responsibility Act. They seem to ignore the end responsibility part. It states reasons must be given. And, then it might have been then that I pulled out my phone when I'm saying, hey, look, as I said, the council actually told me to come here and directed me to come here to make a statement. And what are your grounds and what's your reasoning? And went to pull my phone out, and then the sergeant turd gone said you're under arrest, and the other police that were already waiting around behind me then cuffed me, assaulted me, injured me, and I was locked up for failure to comply with a lawful direction, even though no lawful direction was given. I was then put in a prison cell in the police station and whatnot. I was also refused medical treatment, and there was a police officer mocking me with a particular injury that they have given me. And anyway, they eventually let me out. They also made what would you call that? Said something very odd, and that was something like, when they asked, they go through, COVID questions again. Do you have a fever? Have you visited anywhere with COVID? Blah, blah, blah. And then they asked what my dietary requirements are, and I said, well, presumably I'm going to be going shortly, so I won't be eating anything here anyway. And just as a side note, I did know an ex-police officer who told me what happens to people's food, which was interesting, with bodily fluids to people they don't like. And anyway, so then the officer in looking after the little prison part made a statement that he said something like, as long as you don't try and grab one of our guns or don't try and kill us, then you'll be leaving sometime today, or something like that, which is very, very odd and intimidating and whatnot. Of course, when I got chucked into prison, they had to take my belt off, my shoes off, empty my pockets, all this other stuff as well. And the phone battery's about to die, but If it does, then I'll just do a part 2 video, and I'll try and be very quick. So anyway, so then I asked them to call a barrister that I know who only does criminal law, and then they're like, oh yeah, what's their name? Or thinking like, how the hell would I have a barrister? And then I said, well, you know, that person was my law professor for criminal law when I did my Juris Doctorate law degree. And then they're like, oh, so it's an academic. And I said, yes, but he's also a practicing barrister. And anyway, so then they wrote that down, and I also asked if they could call my ex-spouse, who was waiting for me to pick her up when she was looking for some other accommodation. And anyway, so they let me out, told me where the hospital was for injuries sustained there. Just before I got let out, and you know, I got my belt back and phone and well, 2 phones and keys and whatever else, shoes back. Then I again repeated my innocence, and again stated that move on directions must be accompanied by reasons. That's what I asked for, and then I was arrested unlawfully. That I was unlawfully arrested. You know, I was also unlawfully assaulted, injured, and falsely imprisoned. But I said about, you know, unlawful arrest only, and said, hey, look, if it turns out that I'm correct and Sergeant Turdgon has unlawfully arrested me, or directed for me to be arrested, whichever way you want to look at it, will she be charged? And then they laughed at me and said, no, of course not, or something, words to those effect, or to that effect. And anyway, so they gave me a court attendance notice or a summons, a criminal one, which maybe I can get. I'll be back in a second, but I'll just keep talking. Hopefully you can hear. So, how can I cover that? It's going to be a bit weird to cover, but and it's a bit scrumpled up too. So again, it's a notice to appear. Sorry, it's all scrumpled and whatnot, and I have to cover the address, even though it's not even where I'm residing, but you know, it can be used to find me. Potentially. So it has on the 23rd of November 2021 at 2:04 p.m. you failed to comply with a police move on direction issued in the suburb of Cleveland, which is false. I was not issued a move on direction at all without reasons being provided. Even when I was there, I asked multiple times for reasons, and it states for me to appear at Cleveland Magistrates Court on the 14th of the 12th, 2001 at 8:30 p.m. So that's interesting. They want me there at 8:30 p.m. And then it's signed by Sergeant Turdgon at 2:43 p.m. So I must have been there for about half an hour or something, but might well have been later than that. About 39 minutes according to this, but you know, I'll have to see when I did a phone call and stuff like that to check the times. But anyway, then when I drove back to temporary accommodation, I saw on my phone that I had a missed like SMS, which is on the phone that I'm filming with, so I can't show you, but it went along the lines of, dear Mr. Martin, I tried calling you and letting you know, but the Sergeant of Prosecutions has decided not to charge you, that the notice to appear has been cancelled, and instead we are issuing you with a caution, in which case I've done nothing wrong whatsoever, and Turd Gone should have been arrested and charged. But of course you have the thin blue line, and apparently it's a thin blue line of corruption. And there are some good police officers there. The way I figure it, there might be 20% good police, 20% bad police, and 60% that as long as sins are within certain boundaries, that they'll do nothing about the corrupt police or the bad police or some figure like that. But anyway, so receive that, and I'll do a part 2 video. So actually, again, sorry for disappearing. I'll just try and do something to see if I can avoid having to do a part 2 video. So just got to send someone a message. So anyway, back to the actual fundraiser. So basically I'm doing this in secret, in that my ex doesn't know that I'm doing it. Just SMS'd her to stay away with the children for a little bit and explain the current situation. So because we have children and we are obviously have to be involved with a homelessness service because of government protections for children, of course, that are actually in harm's way or at harm or whatever, then there's certain things you have to do and cannot avoid doing. So basically for the past 3 months we have been living in a hotel. It is the cheapest hotel and cheaper than any caravan parks that are available. That is within probably a 200 kilometre radius, something like that, or 100 kilometre radius, whatever it happens to be. And we've got no other choice if we aren't in paid suitable accommodation. So it doesn't include being like in a tent. Even if you're in a caravan park, then our children would be taken from us. And that's what it is. And like I said, we should be in witness protection, I believe, and the police aren't doing that. Then so with the cheapest hotel that has availabilities and cheapest accommodation, more than a tent, or obviously sleeping in a car, your kids get taken off you as well. And you can't have 4 people sleeping in a little tiny car that's all packed up as well. Then combine that with the storage costs, and it is costing every week about probably 95% of what I get in a fortnight. And obviously I can't move out either and just have my ex with the children alone, because they cannot afford the accommodation either. And we can't even afford it with 2 people. We've run up loans with people, also things like loans like not only from actual human beings, but also with companies such as Afterpay and Zip Pay and whatever, even just to buy food, that kind of thing. We have been doing that for 3 months, and it's sucked up all remaining savings. We don't have things that we can sell in particular, since things have been destroyed. And also yesterday I found out that our car was stolen as well. Within the last couple of days, I did contact the council to ask if they removed the car, and they said no. And now a car's been stolen. With the car, it did have a water vapor, i.e. vapor lock, so either some little bit of water in a tank or some sediment. so it wasn't starting properly. So and then also because of financial reasons, and we let the rego expire, but it's also not insured. And the car was half mine and half my ex-spouse's. She paid for half of it and I paid for half of it. And anyway, so with the fundraising I'm trying to do, like I said, I'm trying to get $15,000 for my ex. So where that goes is to paying back the loans to friends slash family, for even things like paying for the accommodation, to things like zip pay, afterpay, whatever it's called, and also paying storage. We're late in paying storage. They may incur late fees and may just sell the belongings as well, liquidate everything, unfortunately. So that would be the rest of what remains that hasn't been destroyed by person A, and that's not very helpful. Also, my ex requires new ID. She also needs to go to the Finnish embassy in Canberra, but she needs to have more Australian ID. A lot of our stuff was destroyed. As I said, she needs Australian ID because she's been in Australia for more than 10 years, and to then take that to the Finnish embassy in Canberra to then get a passport for herself. Sorry about the battery dying there, it's got some more charge now. So I also did forget to say that when I went yesterday to report the car being stolen, that the first officer, the one at the desk, took it seriously and wrote down some notes so he could get a QP number or Queensland Police number, and then send an SMS with a link to upload evidence, proof of ownership, any suspicious activities or things like that. And then when I left the station, a different police sergeant, again this is at Cleveland Police Station because they're open after 5 p.m, hence not going to Redland Bay Police Station, but the sergeant came out and said, "Mr. Martin, we're too busy," this is very paraphrased, and you have to just report it online. In which case, when you report things online and they're of a serious nature, it just invariably says, "We can't accept this report, go to the closest police station or your local police station," or whatever. And anyway, so that's what happened there. But to summarize what the fundraising's for, and I will do a short version video, but this is the long version to further explain things. Then there's a 2.2% fee with GoFundMe plus 30 cents per transaction. So it depends on the size of the donations, i.e. the transactions, but let's just call that 2.5%, something like that, as an approximate figure. So the fundraising's for $15,000, and maybe people donate more, maybe they donate less, but you have to put some kind of goal in mind, and then it'll be 2.5% more than that to cover the GoFundMe fees. And then the money is for Yannicka to pay back her friends and family that she's borrowed money from for necessities of life like accommodation and food, and pay her overdue storage that should have been paid on the 1st of September, that kind of thing. And for any future storage, it might take a month for her to be able to leave with the children, that kind of thing. Also paying for her to get some Australian ID. She has had troubles with that in not having had a license or anything like that in Australia, and the Finnish embassy said she needs Australian photo ID to be able to get a Finnish passport because she's been in Australia for more than 10 years. So basically Australia knows more about her current existence or whatever than Finland. Then for her to go with the children to Canberra, do any relevant citizenship applications with the children. In the meantime, assume that might have a pending period or something like that, but to get Australian passports for the children, her own passport, Finnish passport. She may well try to become an Australian citizen just before she leaves, so in case she wants to ever come back. And plane tickets, accommodation, that kind of thing as well. And then when she gets to Finland, then she'll need some money for that as well, and hopefully she can stay at families' houses, but still have to pay for food and maybe she might have to send a box or a couple of boxes of her belongings back to Finland, something like that. So shipping for that, and there's other miscellaneous expenses so that she can be debt free and have a little bit of money left over to set up in Finland. And anyway, so that's what I'm trying to get her funding for. And if you could please share this, get the story out there so that more people can see it. It's sort of like a funnel in that, however many people see it, there'll be a certain percentage of people who then may donate or help in any other way that they can. And it goes from there. It's also good, I believe, to get the information out about the victimization of myself, and therefore unfortunately that's rubbed off on my ex-spouse and my children too, with the police not preventing crime, not enforcing the laws, not charging someone with various offences, not acting on corroborating evidence, or if people recorded planning to murder two people, etc. And yeah, so when my ex and my children are out of the country, I will feel a lot more safe for them. Obviously in Finland it's a very hard country for people to be tracked down without getting attention, since English isn't a first language there, as an example. And they are by nature a very private lot of people. It was weird, like I've been to Finland twice, but being Australian and not a brand new minted 18-year-old Australian or whatever, because society has changed. But when I was growing up, people would walk down the street and say hi, that kind of thing. Someone might be walking a dog and you're like, hey, your dog's cute, what type of dog is it? And then you strike up a conversation. But you do that in Finland and people look at you like you're nuts, because for whatever reason they are very private people, and that probably helped them during war times and stuff like that. Loose lips sink ships, that kind of thing. And they keep to themselves. But anyway, I do thank you for your consideration, and thank you for watching the video. And hopefully you can help, even if it's just clicking share, sharing it to your social media. Then that can get the message out. And I'll leave it at that, and thank you again. And then I'll film a short little explanation video, so people aren't watching for an hour or being expected to watch an hour without knowing what it's about. So thank you. Bye.